Welcome to a Look Back Machine Shorty. Today we examine two Roger Rabbit rides that almost were, with writer Bob's Ganaway and writer director Bill Kopp. Here's Bob's Ganaway.
Yes, Mark Dindal and I, we go back, we go way back. Mark Dindal and I, years ago, there was when they were going to build onto Disney MGM Studios in Florida, they wanted to have, they were thinking about two things to build down there, either a Toontown or a Tower of Terror. They hadn't decided yet. So Mark was actually directing a ride or animation for a ride called Toontown Transit, which was going to be this bus ride to Toontown, kind of using like the Star Tours technology, but it'd be a bus. And I was brought in to write the Roger Rabbit cartoon that was going to be shown or you were going to experience during the ride. And then Mark and I actually ended up pitching to Eisner and Wells that ride. Yeah, it was actually quite a fun idea for a ride. It never happened, but it's one of those lost, never made Disney rides, Toontown Transit. But yeah, that was my first. The idea was if you walked down, I think it was Sunset Boulevard, you were going to be there would be Toontown at the end of it instead of Tower of Terror, which is what's there. There was going to be two ways to get to Toontown. You could walk in, or you could take the Toontown Transit. So you were going to get on this bus, and it was it was Gus the Bus, and Gus is a wannabe actor, and he was going to take you to Toontown. But so you would get on the bus, and you would get in, you take your seat, and then you would be on your way to Toontown, driving down the road and going through the tunnel. And then he was going to get a call for an audition while you were on the ride and wanted to take had to take a quick, you had to go with him on to his audition, and his audition was for a Roger Rabbit cartoon. So you were going to end up driving through a Roger Rabbit cartoon while it was happening. And it took place at this big fireworks factory, and it was chaos. But it was basically taking the audience on a ride through a cartoon with Gus the Bus, who was a wannabe actor.
Here's Bill Kopp with his version of the Roger Rabbit ride.
Oh, Pat Ventura and I worked on that at Imagineering. Actually, yeah, God, I'm glad you reminded me of that. That was a big deal. That was what we did in between, yeah, while we were, I guess before I quit. They asked us to say, hey, we had in the parking lot there, we had the what do you call them, the simulators from like the Star Tours. Those things you're in that coupled with the film you're looking at gives you the sensation that you're really moving, right? And we had one of those in the parking lot. And when you looked at it move, like it barely really moved. It just tilted but inside, if you look at the movie, I mean, it does a number on you. It's like, wow, that's cool. We had it there because they were doing the something with the blood corpuscle thing. What was it called for Florida? They had a ride there where you were a red blood cell or something, and then we said they'd asked us to say, hey, well, hey, can you do something for Toontown? And we were like, oh, sure. And they said, look, go crazy, and we'll pull back later, but go nuts, and then you're going to be meeting with these Imagineerians. We're thrilled about it because it was right next door, and we would walk through there at lunch all the time. And when we were doing the Roger stuff, they had all the pirate robots in there that were going to either Paris or Japan, I forget. But they didn't have skin on. There was all these gears. Oh, fucking weird, man. But we'd go in there and be like, wow, show us how this works. They would just turn them on and crank. It was great. It was so cool. So we kind of knew a bunch of those guys already. And then so Pat and I just came up. It was a tour bus that was giving you a bus tour through Toontown, but it was driven by Goofy. Like Goofy was the driver. And at this time, we were thinking of it like Star Tour. And, everybody had their, it was like Beverly Hills, tour, but out of its mind. And there was lots of fire and crashing and danger. And so we took all these really loose storyboards and we pitched them the ride. And they're like, okay, well, 80% of this is impossible or dangerous, And we said, okay, well, that's what we want to hear. So how do we hone it? And we finally did hone it down. And then, it wound up being the ride that they have, which is not a bad ride. And we were some of the guys that were also saying like, hey, everybody's got to stand in a line, and that's fucking boring, you know. So let's do something with the line, where the line is part of the thing, and that caught on, you know, to because they were redoing all that stuff, you know, in the park. And I don't know. If, I'm not saying that we thought of that, but it was like we were definitely hip to it, and you know, we loved the park. The greatest thing about doing Roller Coaster Rabbit was, and we did this at Magic Mountain too. We just told them who we were and showed them our IDs in front of the line, man, every time. Because we rode every roller coaster in Southern California over and over again in the front car. I filmed the tracks. That's how we got that cool. You know, we were able to put that into the computer, so like, here's what it looks like when you're just on those tracks. I would stick the camera out front and just we roared. We never had to wait in line. But yeah, it got honed up, but a lot of our gags are still in there. And then they brought us back, me and Pat. This was a while after to do the Bugs Life thing to come up with gags for the Bugs Life, right? And I have to credit Pat Ventura with the stink bug gag because they had that idea. Like, well, and then yellow smoke, and Pat's like, nah, you know what? It's gotta stink. I mean, you know, there's got to be something you can use that's gonna vaporize quickly, but it's gotta stink, and it does stink. And that was Pat Ventura. It's funny.